Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Why do public schools actually suck? What actually makes them bad? What makes their test scores low? It's not the reasons that you're mostly going to see on social media. Now, keep in mind, just some background, I'm a former public school teacher. I'm a credentialed teacher. I homeschool my kids. The reasons that I homeschool my kids are not really the reasons that public schools suck and why we've seen a decline in their test scores and their performance. The reality is public schools are performing worse because demographics have changed. We are not comparing the same kids. So it's a change of demographics. You can't say this politely in a lot of places. Just some background for this too. I've been seeing a lot of social media posts. I watched a YouTube video from a big channel the other day trying to figure out why schools have gotten worse, and they just kind of circle the issue without saying it because it's impolite to say you have a lot of immigrant children and children of immigrants who are bringing down test scores and changing the academic environment so it's worse now than it used to be. The other stuff that I talk about on this channel that's maybe against public schools or for homeschooling or just ways that public school could be improved, that's a very, very small percentage of what actually is changing, because a lot of times what we're testing with like standardized tests, we're testing generalized intelligence plus a little bit of their academic background. And so as you have a lower concentration of that, classic white American demographic that we were maybe testing in 1970 and saying, here's where they are, and they've gotten lower now. Unless you're controlling for that, you're not really getting the full picture. What you're doing is you're comparing that population to just a different group of people. America is not the same people it was 40, 50 years ago. And because you're not comparing the same people, you're not really comparing anything. You need to figure out, have the same students, are black students performing worse? Are white students performing worse with the same sort of population that they had 50 years ago? Not all students then and all students now. You're just not painting an accurate picture of what's going on. I've seen so many pieces of content that come up with crazy ideas for why kids are doing worse. One of them is that kids are hungry. I'm sorry, kids are not hungry. We have the most generous welfare programs that I can think of that are attached directly to public school. Free lunch. There's schools that are Title I schools where everyone gets free lunch. They don't even means test this anymore. Everyone gets free lunch. No excuses. Everyone gets free lunch. Kids are still coming hungry. Okay, free breakfast now. Free breakfast, free lunch, free afternoon meal. So 3 full meals a day paid for by the state so that kids are not hungry. And yet you still have teachers that are, let's be honest, I think most of them are lying when they say, well, we caught a kid stealing food. It's like, if he was actually so hungry that he's stealing food, that's a child abuse issue. You need to be calling CPS. Child Protective Services needs to be doing an investigation because that kid's being intentionally starved by abusive parents, especially when you can get 3 free meals a day plus hundreds of dollars a month in food stamps. That's an abuse issue. If you are realistic about poverty here in the United States, you find that there's a very strong correlation between poverty and being on food stamps and being obese. That is to say, our poor people are so well fed, they're medically worse off because they've been so well fed. They're obese. There's not a shortage of calories in the United States of America. You're going to have a very hard time finding any kid that's starving that's not the result of like actual child abuse, like parents intentionally keeping food away from a child. In which case, if they're showing up to your classroom and they're stealing your food and it's not because they're just bad kids who steal food because they don't have any morals, then that's a CPS issue. So I get all kinds of these stories that are like this. Oh, education's worse now because of this thing, because teachers don't get support from administrators. That might be part of it, but all the things we're talking about, they're this little tiny percentage. There's a little tiny percentage, and the big one is just you're not comparing the same kids. It's the demographics that have changed. But those demographics alter a lot about the public school experience and do make it worse than it otherwise would be. So whatever your population is, that's what you're going to gear your academics towards. I know this from being a public school teacher at a Title I school, you can't have the same standards that you have at a school that's full of rich kids. You just can't. You're going to be banging your head against the wall. You have to meet kids where they are. And that's where a lot of my kind of outsider opinions on things like homework have come from, is I adjust my expectations to reality. I try not to adjust reality to my expectations, because you're setting yourself up for failure. And that's why I think a lot of our opinions about public school and it being very helter-skelter is we're trying to make reality fit our preconceived expectations. And that's just not a great way to go about it. You have to meet kids where they are. But meeting kids where they are means you're lowering the standards, you're changing the academic environment so that those gifted kids have fewer opportunities to excel than they used to have. So what do parents do if they're really involved with their kids? Well, they take them out of that public school, they put them in a private school. They take them out of the public school, they put them in homeschool, where they can get accelerated academic achievement, accelerated learning, and set them up for just better success in the future. So part of that, we have to be honest, why do homeschool kids score so much better than kids in the schools? It's mostly selection bias, where the smart kids with the super involved parents see that the public school is not going to give their kid what they want, that it's not a safe academic environment for them in a lot of cases. Again, that's the result of demographics. They feel that their kid's not safe. They feel that their kid's not being able to get through all the material in a math class because you are teaching to a lower standard. In order to get through any of the material, you have to teach to a lower standard. So you take them out, you put them in a different academic environment where they can actually achieve. And that just makes that public school have even lower standardized test scores. So I've had some people respond to this by saying, well, we shouldn't allow the smart kids to be taken out of public school because that's what's making public school worse. Again, you're skirting around the issue, which is that the demographics have changed. No, it doesn't work that way. Average scores may go up if you make all the smart kids go to public school, but that the smart kids are not making the dumb kids smarter. It doesn't work that way. A kid that's lower achieving is not going to magically achieve higher and achieve more and learn more because he's in the proximity of kids who are smart and are able to be high achievers. It just doesn't work that way. What you're seeing is just an average increase in scores because the far end of that bell curve, they're now included more in the scores. That makes them go up. It's not that the lower achieving kids are magically learning more. In fact, they may actually learn less depending on what you're doing, because if you accelerate the material, all of a sudden they can't hang at all and they have to be in a remedial class, and their achievement actually can end up being lower because they just can't get with whatever the higher mainstream is. You know, you always teach to like the middle 50%. Not as a rule, but practically that's what ends up happening. So no, forcing the smart kids to go back into public school, which is bad for them, is not going to be good for the lower achieving kids. You have to meet those lower achieving kids where they are and figure out how to maximize whatever you're going to do with them. So that's my whole spiel on why public schools actually suck. It's because our demographics have changed over time. We've replaced one population with another. We have kids that are coming from outside the country. They don't know English. They're at a major academic disadvantage. And then you're going to have to go look at the average scores of where they're coming from. And if the average scores of where they're coming from are low, why would you expect their scores, as soon as they set foot on the magic dirt of the United States, to rise to the former academic standards of the United States? It's just not a realistic expectation. Not at all. So no one really wants to say why it is, but parents know why it is. And doesn't mean that it can't be improved. It doesn't mean it can't be made better, but you just have to be realistic about what you're doing. Parents tend to know. Most people are not going to speak honestly about it because it's not convenient. It's not something that you can be like, write a bigger check to us and we'll make the kids do better. It's something that can't be solved by the school system on its own. Anyway, leaving your thoughts down below. I'd love to know what your thoughts happen to be and what some of your decisions, if you have children, what some of those decisions are and have been. And I'm just interested in hearing what you guys have to think about it. So have a great one. I'll see you all next time. Peace out.